Hello,
So,
Tony.
hey, how's it going, Sasha? How are you doing? It's good to see you
1 to 10,
again.
it's 11. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, man, I gotta tell you, that text you sent me
Hmm.
really got me like the text
It's
because it was because you sent me somebody else's podcast, and I think it was a short, but it was titled "Don't Ask Your Dog to Do Anything That You Can't Reinforce." And so there was
okay.
this dog trainer. I can't remember who this dog trainer was, but when I was watching it, just briefly, I think it was like maybe a 2 minute clip. He said, "I'm not saying, oh, you have to give your dog treats every single time, or you have to use the e-collar every single time." He said, "What I mean is that if your dog is doing something and you don't have any treats to reinforce it, or you know that you don't have an e-collar, then you can try not asking him to come to you. Because if
Hmm.
for some reason you can't reinforce it, then you waste the command or something like that." So um,
I got you thinking.
you got me thinking, man. And I was just like, and I said, that's such a huge problem because I understand what he's saying, but basically what the gist I got from that podcast was he was saying that um, if you're always rewarding your dog, chances are if your dog does something and you call them without the reward, there's a good chance that they're going to respond to you because they're always expecting a reward,
Hmm.
right? And so that is a major dog training thing called intermittent reinforcement. It's just
Hmm.
basically because with operant conditioning, which is dog training, right? For those that maybe don't know what operant conditioning is, it always has to be reinforced. If you don't reinforce it, it just goes away, right?
Hmm.
And that was something that a scientist named Ivan Pavlov did as a study called classical conditioning. You
Hmm.
know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Pavlov's dog, but most people, when you say, "Have you heard of Pavlov's dog?" Yeah, that's the bell and the dog salivates, right?
Hmm.
So there's an association that the bell rings and food's going to be accompanied soon. So the dog salivates because he's expecting, I heard the bell, that means food should be coming. And then eventually you just ring the bell, but no food's coming. And you see how long the dog will salivate before it realizes, oh, wait a second, there's no food coming.
Hmm.
And so that's why training has to be reinforced because if you don't reinforce it, it will go away.
Hmm.
But what happens is Ivan Pavlov did another study where he did take the food away and ring the bell, but sometimes he put the food back in. So then the dogs had no way of knowing, well, maybe there's food, maybe there's not food. Then he cut the food out altogether, and then the conditioned behavior lasted longer, but it still extinguished and went away,
Hmm.
which means you have to intermittently reinforce for the rest of your life. So, regardless of what he said in that podcast, it still doesn't change the fact that you have to do treats and tools for the rest of your life with your
Yeah,
dog.
that's
You always have to control and manage them somehow. You always have to reinforce the behavior. They're never really done. And I think when people look for a dog trainer the first time, especially when it's their first experience, I don't think they know that the training is always going to be maintained. I think they think when they hire a dog trainer, their dog's going to be trained and they're like, yes, I don't have to worry about this problem anymore. And they don't realize, oh, no, the training never stops. You have to reinforce it intermittently for the rest of your life. Otherwise, the dog will go back to the way it was. So that's like lifelong training. That's freaking exhausting.
Yeah, but that's kind of like a mainstreamly narrated, like a way of living with dogs and forever having a problem that you need someone to solve it. And when you once you mentioned the Pavlov, that's interesting. Like no one reads the conclusion of his study, where in conclusion, literally he said like this type of the conditioning cannot be used in something that we want to learn or something that we want to enforce for a long time, because the primal stimulation disappears, what was causing the behavior or the physiological change to happen, we take that stimuli away. The other one that's developed by that side gonna slowly deteriorate. So, and that was like everyone is, oh, if you do this then that, and if you do this then that, leads to that what you just said, like the forever life. That's going to be like a forever life of yours, or for anyone else that do that. And I think like that's unfortunately leads to this poor and unfortunate statistic that we have when a human dog relationship is in place, that you have like 4 to 5 million dogs abandoned every single year just because the behavior issues are unsolvable or solvable. And because of the frustration some of the dogs are in, they're labeled like aggressive, unable to be rehomed, and unfortunately million of those dogs get euthanized. And only industry that we have around supports that narrative, and I actually don't know why, because for a long time we have other solutions that challenge this mainstream accepted way of people, how I can say, monopolizing this industry and market, serving actually more people than dogs. And I think that's something that I guess like we can start standing up against, because that's what the dog, we need to advocate the dogs. We need to stop advocating for the people, because we people do have a choice and we can do whatever we please in our life, bearing the consequences of our choices. But unfortunately, our dogs can't. They are actually, our dogs are kind of like how you say that, like our dogs are forced to embrace our beliefs. Whatever we think is good for them, we're going to do with them out from pure love. I think like no one of dog owners and those trainers, I guess, doesn't want bad to that dog. Like I think like all of them are driven by some sort of love towards dogs. But I think like developing this industry, we actually lost the dog somewhere down the road.
I think canines unfortunately have been transformed into victims. And the pet industry has used fear-based ideas to shape almost everything now. So as a result of that, glorified backyard breeders have been replaced by actual legitimate breeders. I feel that even mixed breeds have been kept victimized by rescue organizations claiming to be helping them. And then kind of what we're discussing here is knowledge assessment tasks or crash courses to be a certified dog trainer by really popular organizations have replaced trainers that have actual real experience.
I want to say, you touched an amazing point, and the trigger word for me was this forceful way of teaching dogs how to behave, because we also think that we need some outside force or tool or something outside, like a e-collar or reward or punishment of sort, because let's get back to the Pavlov. This positive reinforcement cannot sustain. They need to be conditioned and reconditioned through the life of the dog. And then what can actually learn dog not to behave in the undesirable and unwanted behavior is to cause trauma. Once the trauma is enforced, and that's what's actually very use of force on a dog's, like an e-collar, any kind of tool or any kind of punishment that might expose dog to fear, to that state of fear. Oh my God, if I do this, then I'm gonna be hit, I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna be choked, I'm gonna be collared, whatever, tends to freeze the dog. And that's a trauma imprint in brain cells that's gonna actually create a pathways. Because if trauma is intense and it comes straight to the body, and we experience trauma, the brain going to remember it. Or if it's trauma constant and it's not as much as enforced, like to create something like let's say,
like it's more aversive than actual really traumatic.
Again, if we are kind of enforcing that fearful behavior from when we punish the dog on one end, slowly it can again create trauma inside the dog, and the dog wouldn't behave because he learned or he chose to behave. He learned to behave because the dog was frozen in time, left frozen in time. It's exactly what the kids and we are going through the life when we experience some big disappointment of the parents, when we feel betrayed, when we feel bullied, when
it's not just that though. It's also because the direction that you're taking in as far as the punishment, the trauma, maybe the more harsher training methods. Totally agree with you 100%. But I think what a lot of people, especially in the pet industry, don't understand, it's not just those methods, it's also the positive reinforcement that does the same exact thing, actually.
It just cannot, because I think like you are right. On one end, it's a blackmailing, like a circus. If you're going to do this, I'm going to give you a food. And then you have a dog that doesn't react anymore on a treat. So the trainer would come home and tell you, oh, you need to bring the dog to the training before he has his bowl of the food.
Or exactly. Trainers always say, don't feed the dog before you come to class. Make sure he's hungry, like SeaWorld, so that way we can starve the whales so they perform. Yeah, totally get that stuff. That's how I feel when I hear that. But the other thing also too is the positive reinforcement. To me, positive reinforcement, just the dog training in industry, I consider just one whole operant conditioning box. That's really what it is. Whether you're doing positive reinforcement, whether you're doing dog training, it's operant conditioning. And operant conditioning can be quite harmful to an animal's state of mind. You've seen it at SeaWorld. You've seen it with people that do movie production sometimes. They become a marketing thing. And what happens is that if you just watch, for example, there's a documentary that we should discuss in a future podcast called Blackfish. That's all positive reinforcement, right? They all use positive reinforcement. But they're not meeting, even though they think they're meeting the whale's psychological and emotional needs because they have this great chemistry with the trainers and they swim with them, they are not looking at the bigger picture. And everybody sees the whales performing and they look happy. And people think that because their dogs are performing for all these tricks, they look happy too. But it's the state of mind that your dog's in when they're doing that trick, that anticipation. Down, sit, what do you want me to do? It's super unhealthy for the mind, right? And not only that, but then even if they reward intermittently, that even screws them up even more. Because here's a good example. I had one person tell me, well, Tony, don't you want to get paid for your work? Yeah, I do want to get paid for your work. Well, dogs have to be paid too. And then I had to tell them, are you married? Yeah. What do you love about your wife? Oh, I love that she does this. I love she does that. She's amazing. She backs me up. And I go, how much do you pay her for that? Because I don't want to have employee-employer relationship with my dog. I want to have a symbiotic family and love orientation with my dog. And so paying your dog to me is absurd. Then also too, I also see where people say, oh, I'm going to give him a treat sometimes and not give him a treat. Okay, so we're going to be talking about an employer. And your boss tells you to come to work and you hope he's going to pay you because last time he didn't pay you. He does usually pay you, but he hasn't paid you in 2 weeks. But he's going to pay you. So do you go to work in hopes that he's going to pay you? Because if you do, you're dumb. You need to get another job. Right? It doesn't work for people. It doesn't work for dogs either.
So if we answer the question to this podcast first, like we just roll this up and we go organically as we go by talking about all of these topics. But if we would pick up one for this first type, would be like where this pet space or pet care industries, dog care industries in general. And if we can touch all of these we can use all of these foundations that we laid up now at the point, like picking from a lot of places, bring back to the one simple question: what is wrong with this world? How come that the man's best friend happened to be the animal that hurts humans the most? Because the number of the attack, dogs living in close proximity of the people, yet happen to be the relationship turns into such absurd from man's best friend to interaction in between humans and dogs that lead to these full shelters of abandoned dog because of the poor behavior issues that no trainer can solve, the allergies on all kind of the level, and problem with the mess that the dog creates at home. So the people says, I just can't bear with this anymore. I tried everything. I bought everything the people told me to buy. I bought every single course. I watched every single video. Everything I tried, nothing worked. I can't deal with this. I need to decide my marriage or the dog, or my family or the dog. And then, of course, dog loses, ends up in a shelter. So how do we do, and what do we do in order to make this industry more dog centric rather than pleasing people centric? Because if I tell you, the people, investors come here and say, oh, I want to do this because the people want to buy it. The people want to buy this, and people want to buy that, and people need a daycare, and people need a boarding. And
I think marketing has really bastardized the dog training industry. So I understand the pet industry. I understand buying buying toys, buying bones, and I understand there's always been a market for that. But when dog trainers were more individuals, there wasn't really companies or corporations offering dog training. So if you needed to find a dog trainer, you most likely had to go in the phone book during the 80s, go on the internet, find whoever was local to you. But now they have corporations that are also getting involved in dog training. And then the marketing behind that has had to change how dog trainers even get clients and what the clients want to see. And so a lot of those dog trainers, instead of focusing on the dog, which is the whole reason why they got into the profession, now are more focused on marketing, pleasing the person owner, showing them that they can get the fastest results possible. It's become this infomercial of, and today you can have your dog listen to you in 4 lessons, So it's really gone a horrible, horrible direction. I don't really think there's very many real dog trainers out there anymore, other than a few.
Now I think like a very good point. You are again putting that word and using it so much like a dog training. And I think like we are heading towards direction in a couple of years. Let's say, I think like millennials and Gen Zs are awakening like not as much as woke culture.
Yeah, I think the younger crowd is getting keen onto, wait a second, these people are trying to manipulate our minds and market us. I don't want to buy Nike. I want to buy Reebok.
I want to shop in second. I want to shop in second hand, right? Because So and now those people are questioning things, and I love circuses, and I love going to circus, seeing elephant perform and lion doing this and all kind of those things. I would be really dishonest if I would tell you I didn't enjoy those shows until I didn't learn what's going on behind the scene. Then overnight I started to hate it. And I think like what we are getting with this like exposure of the real world that exists there, with the show collars, with the e-collars, with this, and you're making an amazing point when you said like there is no
training. It's just training in general.
No, I get that, but you're amazing. You're amazing. How you say that? A parallel that you said that there is no reason, there is no difference in between creating a trauma that you do with a force or blackmailing a dog with a treat. It's both are emotional abusive. One includes physical abuse as well, but the other one is an emotional abuse. When you use a tool that actually, when you use a food that brought us together as a manipulation to tell the dog, if you don't sit, I won't give you a food, or if you don't do this, I won't give you a food. And that's what actually, I think now, as we start to talk about this, the training maybe is not even the good word to use, because what you do and what I tend to do is not dog training. It's like something more inclusive that understands the difference in between human and dogs, giving both species space and place to live.
Yeah,
and
most behaviorists, and
together.
again, there's even very few real behaviorists out there, but most real bona fide know what they're doing behaviorists don't generally do any operant conditioning at all. But those are very far few between.
That's the whole point of dog.
Because if that was the case, like if somebody said, "Oh, my dog trainer said I should go to behaviors," what's the behaviors doing? He's doing clicker training and e-collar training. Then you just basically hired another dog trainer. Then that wasn't a behaviorist.
My point actually is that dog doesn't need to go to the school. that the humans are one that need to go to the school, and the humans need to be trained to work with the dogs. And the way every single human should undergo the training, that nothing to do with the dog, to understand the dog as a species with its own needs and differences.
I think too also is, and this is kind of important for people that we don't want to lose as we're talking this, but I don't think many people know that this actually exists. And so when you say it, they just don't believe it. But a lot of people don't realize that training or taking internet advice and following those things create reactive behavior. And I think they would find it surprising to know that a lot of the times not training your dog and conditioning them in crazy ways, you could actually have one of those homeless dogs that doesn't need to be told to do anything. They're just good. They know when you're leaving. You don't have to call them because you're leaving. They know you're leaving. They follow you. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was going to share this with you anyway, but I was talking to a friend of mine much older than you and I. And he's a PhD applied animal behaviorist. And when I was talking to him, I asked him what he thought of the industry, like what he thought. And he's retired. And one of the things he told me is like, I would never, ever go back in the pet industry. He says, not the way I see it now. He said, I would never even want to be a dog trainer. And I thought, why is that? And he says, because I remember like the 60s, the 70s, right? If you remember the 60s and 70s, dog training wasn't even popular. As a matter of fact, I think there was people that did it more. It was more of a hobby. It wasn't a profession. It was more of a hobby. And it's just people that were just good with animals. And a lot of times the dog trainers in the 60s and the 70s, they only charged like $20 for a session, right?
And you wouldn't need more than two.
You really have to know your history to know what actually is happening right now. So that's how dog training used to be. And then what ended up happening was, actually, here's another thing also too, just to kind of reiterate how it was back then. Nobody really needed dog training. That's the reason why it was like that. That's the reason why dog trainers didn't charge that much. And that's why there wasn't very many to begin with, because most people didn't really need dog training. If you had a bad dog, you did something while you're raising it that screwed it up. And the dog trainer back then just helped point out what that was so you can not do it anymore. But for the most part, the dogs back in those times, have you ever heard latchkey kids? You ever heard that term, latchkey kid? Latchkey kids, I think they've had them in the UK. It was a really problem because parents couldn't control their kids. So latchkey kids, what they do is they would leave the house and go around and wreak havoc in the neighborhood. But by the time their parents come home, they're in the house. They're like, they never went anywhere. They call them latchkey kids because they're going through the gate, they're coming back in, right? Okay. So there was also a problem in the pet ownership criteria back in the 50s and 60s where they had latchkey dogs.
They would just go out?
Yeah, latchkey dogs. Like basically, a latchkey dog jumps out over your fence, runs around the neighborhood, plays with the kids, does his rounds, visits the butcher shop because the butcher shop seen him before and gives him a treat anyway, and then knows when his owners are going to come back home and is already in the yard. And when the owners come home, they go, oh, he's such a good boy. He's been home all day. Such a great dog. And then some neighbor has to say, no, your dog leaves when you go to work every day, but they come back home. That's how intelligent dogs were back then. Today's dogs, if they get out of the yard, they feel so much that they have to earn their freedom and they celebrate. By the time they're done, they don't even know how to get back home. The dogs today, my friend was telling me that the dogs today don't even resemble the dogs back then. They're so much more feeble-minded than they used to be. It wasn't odd to have dogs walking off leash and just being good with everybody. He said that didn't start changing until dog training started to become popular. And so when dog training started to become popular, it was actually showing people how to not make mistakes when you're raising your dog. But then over time, other people were trying to get into dog training that weren't actually that sufficient at it. So then some group of dog trainers got together and said, we should create this authoritarian thing about dog training because we know how to do it right and they don't. Then they created that organization. And then they had these battles of different styles. And then there's supposed to be the group that regulates the complexity of dog behavior and the proper education that people should have if they're going to call themselves a dog trainer. But it became so political. It was just who had the most numbers, and they would just let anybody join. So what was the point? You
So when
still
I was
have a bunch
originally
of unqualified dog trainers that now have a certificate.
when I was originally calling you and telling like, oh, because we had this podcast, like I was your guest, you was my guest, and then I start thinking about like, oh my God, like we came from completely different backgrounds. Like kind of like I was a groomer, show dog handler. I was entering this veterinary. I was, studying veterinarian science, but then I was disappointed in this animal farming and everything. So kind of I slowly digged my way towards this particular moment in my life where I actually think about how much with my job that I was actually hurting animals by showing them. In a way, I show them because I was kind of perfectionist in everything I do. So my grooming was actually there to hide the faults of the dogs that I was presenting to the judges. And since the confirmation world is actually exist in order to create a space for this pre-zygomatic selection, so you choose the parents based on their champion titles and things like that, and you assume that every champions deserve to be champions. But on the other side, I know myself with over a record of over 800 champions that maybe 30% of them were real champions. The rest I made the champions because I knew my job, and that was a grooming to hide the faults, to make them love being showed, to make them charismatic, and to make them eye-catchy. And I don't know how much I regret that doing, like how much litters the dog I was handling, making champion produce without deserving them, and spreading that false things to puppies that are coming down the road. That guilt created me, and I started to kind of like dig in more in detailed learning about the dogs, occasionally landed me at a place to meet you. And you are coming from training world, doing and trying your best.
I know it sounds anti-dog training, but I've been training in all styles of training for 30 years. I've been in this profession for a very long time.
So
and it's so funny because after all those years of doing e-collar work and clicker training and getting really, Tellington T-touch and all that stuff, all the training methods out there, it's just so weird that I ended up now evolving to this. Wow, I didn't realize that all those years I was training these conditioned states, and that had I stopped and thought about it, I would have seen what the real issue was, and then they could have just been a normal dog. And I started realizing I'm not supposed to be training dogs. Holy crap, I've been doing this for 30 years. How do I do it now?
To be honest, I still feel very guilty, but this guilt I turned into responsibility now. And again, but the interesting point was for this story to say that you are coming from this training world, thinking how you can make dogs behave better, try to teach them, inspire them this way, that way, whatever you said, everything you said now, it's there is everything. You named the technique, you tried it properly, right?
Yeah.
At one point there is some shift, something happened in a human, like in me, particularly me. I can't say for you, but I assume there is something else. Something happened too, that you start thinking about those dogs. How do they feel? How do I impact them with my choices? What do I tell to the people? I don't know. Did you get overwhelmed with the guilt and then took something out from that and to say, oh, maybe now when I see what I did to all of those dogs, I need to, make up to all of those people and excuse, because I literally wrote a very nice letter to all of my clients, apologizing because I didn't know better. And the harm I did to the world of conformation dogs by hiding the faults and knowing more than judges or breeders knew. And you know what my excuse on the end of the day was? I was paid to do my job.
Yeah.
I was paid to do my job. And that's the worst excuse I could find and come up with. But from this point, from this perspective now, looking back, it is a very, very big experience, very harmful outcome of those experiences, because I was just doing things everyone did, but because I'm a nerd by I was raised nerd, and I always dig and ask whys and whats and hows and things like that. So that just gave me competitive advantage to be better than the others. So that's why I was able to do so good while working those things, because I knew more than the judges know. Sometimes I knew more than the breeders knew. I know more than my competitors knew, but I was not leaving the world. I was within the world. And now I do feel responsibility, not guilt anymore. It transformed into responsibility to start to expose as much as I can. And then, as you said, like we started this conversation about people still thinking that by knowing about the human and dog brain and mammal brain, and there is one little question to ask, and I would just love you to answer. What's your point of view on that? Is are the dogs or animals sentient beings, and do they have a soul? And I think coming away from answering that question, does my dog has a soul? And what comes with outcome of the answering that question? Does the dog has a soul, and does animal has a soul? But then we cannot answer the question without answering, does the cow has a soul, and does the pig has a soul? And how we humans interact with the pigs and cows and dogs and any other animals? Or we going to be vegetarian because we want to protect the world by not contributing to CO2 emission, but then we're going to have a dog that we're going to go in a butcher house buying them the piece of meat to feed them? Is that kind of like living on the edge of what we actually believe it's true? And how this world, and around this confusion that I just raised the question around, is entire dog care and training, but also care in any. You take this perception of the human towards dog training and put it in the grooming, put it in the veterinarian relationship with the dogs, put it in any other field of the pet care. The confusion of what to do and how and why is what makes people spend money on one end, and on the other end, it's what makes other people that are interested in earning money actually make money.
Yeah, money complicates everything.
What do you think
it's
about
really
that?
What it is, good. It comes down to money complicates everything because.
Wait, but let's tell me your opinion on that. Are the dogs sentient beings? And if yes or no, whatever the question is out from there, do they have a soul? What do you believe? It's kind of a belief system, because I don't know how we could prove that. But what do you believe? Do the dog have a soul?
Well, I could give you my personal opinion. So I can't give you anything science based, because I don't think science can prove that we have a soul.
You can ask Pope.
Measure it. But what I can tell you and just what I feel is I feel that that God is energy, right? I feel that the energy surrounds us is through one source, and then I feel that that breath of life that God gives you is a piece of that energy, a piece of that source. And that energy, that electrical current that runs through your body, is basically a little of his essence and your essence as well. And dogs also have energy running through their body. So it only makes sense to me that everything at some point has some sort of
spirituality.
Spirituality and conscious spirit within it.
That's amazing. So what if we would say, like, let's turn this into this little discussion, like, if we had that's wonderful, because you said it clearly. And that spiritual portion of the dogs, if let's say exists, because we agree, maybe we just named it differently, like, do the dog has a soul? Yes. And I feel that the dog has this breath of the God in them, because otherwise they wouldn't be living and we wouldn't be together in this end. That gives a foundation for the next question. Are the dogs sentient beings, meaning that they're able to see and understand the world around them, and also from the same perspective have that uniqueness of individual perception of them in the world around them? And from that point, can they experience pain, suffering, sorrow, sadness, and all other emotions that the humans, as a, let's say, most sentient beings on this planet, at least, whatever, from our perspective, can feel. Can the dog go through the same experience based on the environment in which they are based on the environment they are actually conscious of? What's your perception of that? And because I said for my work, that was a critical moment when I said, if the dog has a soul or whatever connection with the spiritual being, if the dog is spiritual first and then material being as a manifestation of that spiritual source, and if they have emotions and can feel emotions based on reality and perception that they are living in, there is no place for training. There is no place for the way we treat dogs. There is no place for nothing. And there is no place for the dog shows. There is no place for nothing that actually drives this machine of human exploitation of the dog's world just for the sake of money. Is that something that actually answering the questions that every single dog owner knows?
I think a lot of the industry is driven by money. And I think just like how animals can be operantly conditioned in their behavior, it's very easy for the marketing and corporations to take advantage of pet owners with that same method of conditioning their minds. And so what I mean by that is I've met a lot of people that, like, dog owners that have come up to me as a behaviors because they need help with behavior. And when they come over to talk to me about their dog, they'll say, oh, Fido used to be reactive. And I say, oh, okay, that's good to know. Thank you for letting me know that. But it's okay because I redirect him now with food and that works. And I go, oh, okay, all right. And I says, but you do that all the time. And she goes, yeah, but he does other things too, like handshake, roll over, play dead, pop, 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 And I go, oh, nice, cool, that's pretty cool. And she goes, yeah, he loves doing tricks. And I'm thinking in my head, no, he loves earning the food. You're basically turning him into a dancing monkey, and that's the same thing they do at SeaWorld or at the circus. It's just for your entertainment, and you're now making it for my entertainment. But I don't blame that person because I used to be like that. So it's just evolvement. They have to evolve, but they can't evolve if you're telling them what they're doing is wrong and kind of bashing them for it. And I'd be hypocrite because I've been a dog trainer for 30 years. But I think the marketing, the industry is to blame for that because they know how bad that is for an animal. They know that conditioning a dog to anticipate food and a trick all day, that's bad. But then dog trainers teach them to normalize that. So basically, in order to maintain the training, you're doing all these tricks all the time, keep your dog in a conditioned state. But it's fun. It's fun. Wouldn't you want to do that with your dog for the rest of its life? It loves doing tricks. It loves doing games. And you can love doing this. And then it turns the owners into perpetual control and management of training for the rest of their lives, not realizing what they're doing because they're conditioned themselves to enjoy it.
Don't you am I like maybe too much when I was talking about this sentience and emotions and dogs and cows and pigs and everything else? Because I to be honest, I think like because every single outcome, every single industry, every single decision that we believe is actually whatever we do in our life, we do out from our belief system. So we believe in some story. Someone told us that this is why we should do it, and that's why we are doing it, because that's good, starting from the money. There is a wonderful, I like to listen to him, Yuval Harari. He's a wonderful, he wrote that wonderful book, The Sapiens, and then the other one was like Homo Deus. When he was talking about like money on its own, it's just a piece of paper, but what's great in money is story behind the money, that we believe that if you give me $1, I need to give you a banana. But if you tell that exactly story to the monkeys, they would tell them, no, like I'm just I'm gonna go out there in nature and I'll take banana. If I need to steal it, I'm gonna steal it from someone else because they're banana. You don't need money to have banana. So we believe entire civilization is based on the belief system and on stories that we just kind of like get them to understand, agree on a story, we agree on the money, we agree on the constructs like a government money, like this is United States. In order to come inside, we need visa, or you need the permits to do that. All of those things are stories that people agreed on. But when it comes to a human-dog relationship, again, we are bringing that story back. Like every single belief system starts in fundamental story about a belief system itself. And that is how everything else outside of that belief system is rolled out. You believe that the clicker training is an amazing way. That's why you create a movement, that because they believe it's a right way to do it. The training is the right way to do it. The vets, everything is right way to do it because the people either want to help or want to make money down the road. But don't you think that actually starting exposing a new philosophical concept, because if you would actually help and direct the industry towards more inclusiveness, and when I say inclusiveness, I mean like more dog-centric, not the human-centric, with the dogs on the leash, because they are after the credit cards, industry after the credit cards, and the dogs are not swiping them. And in entire process of that, I think we developed the industry and we lost the dog.
Yeah.
And don't you think maybe that answering that simple question, are the dogs sentient beings, would actually eliminate training completely from the vocabulary? Because if you live with someone that's sentient and understand their perception and your perception and world around them and suffering and able to suffer and able to feel sadness and able to be afraid of death, of life, or whatever is coming out, you develop some other sort of respect and relationship to that animal and try to find a common ground without around which the both species, me and them, gonna be.
That's when it becomes a symbiotic relationship and not necessarily a control and management type of a situation, for sure. And I think especially if people are going to be watching this podcast for the first time, because I know what one would be thinking was like, if we don't train our dogs, that's ridiculous. They're going to run into the street. Well, then what do you do, right? And I think people don't understand that dogs are fully capable of observing their environment and adapting to the environment.
But that's that's a core of their DNA. That's how they become a dog.
They know that. They know that genetically. It's in their evolutionary psychology. And with people, when I'm working with clients, because I'm a lot of people say, well, then why are we going to go to you if you say don't train your dog? How am I going to pay you to tell me how to not train my dog? It's not so that easy as you think. Like, so for example, the way you're feeding your dog could be promoting food aggression, you didn't even know it. Or having a puppy gate and to section off your house creates barrier frustration, changes the environment, then they develop separation. I mean, all kinds of things happen. So it's not necessarily what I'm saying is it's not obedience training. People are training their dog even though they don't know that they're training their dog. Petting your dog when he's growling.
It's wonderful when you say
your dog. So it's more about how to raise your child properly. And I know that's anthropomorphic what I just said, but it is really about raising children to know how to manage and survive in an environment, not necessarily train your kid.
Yeah, that's exactly, because that was exactly where I was. My point.
Be self-aware of cars. Don't just look at the red light waiting for it to be green. Because if you wait for your red light to turn green, that's operant conditioning. You're conditioned to go, it's green. But if you're not self-aware, you'll see there's a car that's not paying attention to traffic and they're going to slam into you. So there's a difference between being conditioned to follow those things and being self-aware of your environment. And the dogs need to learn that difference. If you make them, like a human, they won't be self-aware of their environment, and that's why you have to control and manage so much, which you and me show people how to do. So if people want to know how to do that, then they would just contact you and me. So.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, but I think like in order to, we can kind of like contact us for more information, things like that. But what I think we can do with this podcast is actually just help people think and rethink a relationship with their dogs and the relationship with the loved one. You was telling their relationship between husband and wife, like, what do you like about her? I like this, I like that. How much do you pay for her? Exactly that, right? That's kind of like
yeah.
But if you put that in a dog human relationship, how did you train your wife to be so great to you, right? You didn't train her. She did it by her will because she loves you. And that's wonderful symbiotic relationship that comes out from the mutual respect. And in order to respect someone, you need to know who they are. And out from there, like then you understand what's together, what brings you together. Then you understand.
And when you're doing this kind of approach that you're talking about, which I do as well, it's helping the owner understand their dog's character, because they're individual beings, right? You can't say, oh, well, my last Rottweiler wasn't like that. You can't compare just because the phenotype is both Rottweilers. They're two different sentient beings. So this one, you need to know its character. And that only comes with a real relationship, not a superficial one.
Yeah, that's what I was looking to hear from you, and you finally said it clear and loud. If dogs are the sentient being, then we need to try harder to understand them. And soon people, every single one of you kind of doubting what me and Tony are talking about and how did we ended up, questioning everything that we did for 30 years. You'll come to the point and ask yourself, does your dog has a soul? What do you think? Are they sentient beings? Can they experience environment, and can be aware of their place in that environment? And are they able to experience sadness, sorrow, happiness, and all kind of other emotions that we know we can experience? Then ask the next question: is that something to be trained? Would you train?
And then also, just, I know we got to get off soon, but just to add to the tail end of that, that sentient being, that dog that they're looking at, it's already been proven by science that they can have a vocabulary of up to 6,000 words.
That we just don't understand.
They can't say it back to you, but they have that capacity, that vocabulary, and in different languages. So if you want something more factual, think about that, and then decide, if my dog can understand the meaning of 6,000 words, why is he confused about don't run into the street, you're gonna give me a heart attack, right? Why is that so confusing for him? And then you have to ask yourself, what am I missing? And that's, aside from the spiritual stuff, that's also just plain common sense.
Yeah, but the common sense would be, I don't like my job, and then the question would be to hundreds of thousands of the miserable people that are waking every single morning and going to the job they don't like. They live in the marriages with the people they hate. They don't want to live in the country they live. It's all common sense to change, yet because of no matter what fucking reason, they don't make that change happen in their life. So it is a common sense. It isn't easy for us to say. But once you start exactly come to this point and ask yourself, like as we discussed in this moment today, like, if the dogs are sentient being, do we have industry or surrounding human-dog relationship that serves sentient beings, or serve like big corporate money and everything, the greed that the people...
They mainly just serve trends.
Sorry?
They mainly just serve trends, like things that are trending.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to influence a lot of professional industries, including ours.
Tony, if we do it right, this is going to become a trend, because this is in service of
it'll be the good one.
Yeah,
It's
I
not by
get
the
that.
corporations. Yeah.
It's nothing bad with the corporate. Can you imagine if the McDonald's would suddenly decide overnight to start serving fresh food and healthy food and the natural?
Oh, that would be amazing.
It's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with having a corporation. The system of the corporation. It's just a problem with that conformation kind of that corporation is making choices that hurts her. You have all of these wonderful ads for the sugars, the Hershey chocolates and everything, and then all of those kids end up having a diabetes.
I'll give corporations a break then. You got me convinced.
What?
I'll give corporations a break then.
Yeah, I think like something of that should be used for the good cause.
Because if we become a corporation, we're going to be a badass corporation.
for the other corporation. That's kind of, maybe that's interesting. Maybe all the corporations have a good goal on the beginning and they just turn themselves into this cancer to a society, because it's crazy that if you want to invest in something, your money, you're going to invest in like a Fortune 500. Out of those Fortune 500, 70% of the companies destroyed the world we know today, like kids and health and everything else is kind of destroyed, including Coca-Cola and the McDonald's and whatever is there. All of those things are in service of money. They produce products that are for sale, to be sold, but not to be bought by the people and spending money on that. So I think this is not some conspiracy theories. I didn't want to sound like that. That's for sure. I just wanted to bring back
on TikTok right now. We might want to talk some conspiracy here. Dogs and UFOs. We got.
I didn't want to sound like that, but we have so many companies out there with such a big budgets and a lot of money. If they would know better, they should do better. But if they don't know how to solve this problem of the human-dog relationship that packs the shelters every single year and have all of those dogs that they earned millions of dollars.
Dog toys are super bad for dogs.
What?
Treats a lot. Dog toys.
Everything. Like we didn't even touch everything.
Yeah.
I think like we can leave this, because if we go away from it, it's maybe great way to stop, because aside from telling what's good, what's bad in the training industry, pet care industry, we said actually what's bad in the world.
Well, let's end it with this then. Let's end it with that it's people unfortunately are making a lot of these choices because they don't really realize that there is something else out there, and you and me are trying to change that. People don't even know what holistic training really is, or cognitive behavior therapy really is. It's not necessarily out there yet. We got to really push ourselves out there, and we got to let people know that there is alternate ways for dogs to learn, which has nothing to do with training. And it's also something that science is currently promoting, right? Even today's scientists with schools, marriage and family therapists, constellations, they don't use operant conditioning anymore. B.F. Skinner was like way back in the 1900s. The dog training industry, or the pet industry in general, is the only industry that's still so focused on 1900 stuff, still thinks operant conditioning is a thing. And in today's industry, in the professional industry, they don't even talk about operant conditioning. It's all about cognitive thinking, cognitive emotion, perception.
Because we know so much more about the brain that we knew then. Also, all of those experiments that were done are like cruel, so cruel that we
teachers don't train the children at school.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
And that's I think like training and education on its own are very powerful tools, and just the question becomes in whose hands they are. And that's exactly because if you have a little dog, and if you the Dr. Watson performed what's the name, that Watson experiment, a little Albert's experiment that we can talk about later. I just want to kind of like wrap this up. And he said, like, give me 20 healthy babies, and I'm gonna make from them top lawyers, top soldiers, top surgeons and doctors, top murderers, and top whatever you want, regardless where they come from, the background, the race, the color, whatever, doesn't matter. Just give me 20 babies and tell me what you want me to do from them, and I'll make it happen. That's how dangerous these tools that we have are. It just kind of, it's on us to choose how to use them. And also, more we know about the brain and how the brain operates, and more we have these tools in order to, that are helping us create a better relationship with our dogs, with our kids.
And what do you mean when you say tools?
I mean, like, tools that are like this, what we do. For example, education is a tool, training is a tool, knowledge is a tool. Everything of that is, again, coming back to a belief system. That's a tool.
Yeah, but you're not talking about training tools like a choke chain or a collar.
No. I'm telling, like, this what we are tooling is a knowledge, is a tool as well that can be applied, but not a hardware. I'm not talking about.
I just want to make sure people know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the hardware. I talk about all kind of tools that we have disposable, and a lot of them are software, not the hardware. I guess let's say that makes sense. Like, because now we know how the brain operates much more than we knew a long time ago.
Yeah, we know way more. I mean, it's like with my clients, when I work with my clients, I work with my clients, even with some behavioral issues, I don't use tools. I don't have the dogs on a collar. I don't have the dogs on a leash. I'm totally hands-free when I'm working with
I don't want to insult you. I'll apologize. The word tool was used just to describe like a hardware.
I just don't want everyone else to get confused, Okay,
I'm sorry.
Because inquiring minds, when we become famous, they're gonna go, "Oh, we have a recording of Sasha Reed saying that he had tools." And I'm gonna be like, they took that out of context.
Knowledge is a tool. Yeah, don't this can be tweaked out from the context, and the people gonna do that. Be ready for that, because the soon we start making little shorts out from this. We were talking about this 45 minutes, and we, in order to come to something, we, you need to lay the foundation, then to give it the context. But then now when the people are going to try to have a shorts out from it, the context can easily be lost. And I'm suffering on my other social media a lot of, sometimes it's a great comment, sometimes are very bad, because the people just didn't get a context in which I said something. But never mind. I'm so happy that actually we clicked so nice, and I hope everyone watched this either live or recorded or whatever, shorts of this, like, enjoyed. And I can't wait to see you next Wednesday.
Yeah. Are you already signed off, or?
No, I actually think that we are slowly signing off, but not before we say hi to the people, I guess.
Yeah. I think in the future, what we should do too is have a moderator also take questions as well.
Yeah. Did we have any questions now at this point? Oh, we had a lot of comments. Oh my God, the veteran didn't tell me about the comments.
Oh, yeah? Okay, cool, awesome. Well, I'm glad everybody was enjoying.
Do you wanna read some comments, or you wanna? I'm gonna say.
Why is Sasha's hair poofy? That's one of the comments.
That's just what I've seen in all my years of animal industry. They don't want to hear the truth, but that's my observation.
You are. There was who said it? Rebecca said, like, people are lazy. They don't want to hear they don't want to face the truth, and they don't want to get out. Get out and do the work, and they just depend on the opinions of the others, because it's much easier to do. That's kind of like guilt fairy. Yeah. Oh, he told me to do this, and it doesn't work. Completely agree, Rebecca. Being free-minded and being perfectly in tune with the laws of nature and every other law that governs our behavior are of the amazing importance for us, for our own health and happiness, and of course everyone around us, including the people and the animals and beings that depend on us. And the dog and children's life, literally depend on their parents' belief system. So if I believe that this is good for my child, I'm going to do it no matter how much hurtful it can be on the end of the life, that exactly what I did hurt them. I know that from my experience with my dad now, when we have a good relationship again and I talk about him, and then I remember I'm 50 years old, Tony. I still remember what happened when I was 7. And then I would come back and ask him, why did you do that? And you did this, and then you make me feel like that. He would say, oh my God, I did that because, and then he would say something that if I put myself in his shoes, probably I would do the same. But then hurt me so much that I kind of remember that vividly. And how many times like that happen in our life that we don't even remember. Because, like a dog, the children also brush things under the carpet so they can survive. And the dog, I think, like we are again opening a rabbit hole. And thank you. That's a great point of maybe.
Yeah, Rebecca rocked on that comment. Absolutely. I'm preaching to the choir, sister.
Yeah, there you go. So we're gonna next time we might have a little more inclusive, like a live, so we can like chat with the people that are with us. And I apologize that we put you aside this time, but I think next time we can also.
Yeah, that's our first podcast. We
are still learning.
So we'll figure it out, but most importantly, we'll listen to what people want to hear too. So
yeah, great.
We'll spin off.
Tony, more than my words can express, I'm so grateful. First, that I met you. Second, that we had in such a nice relationship so far. And I pray for the long live the relationship. And the other side, I really enjoyed today's podcast, and I can't wait for the next Wednesday.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I'm like sitting here going, "Do we just become best friends?"
There you go. Cheers to that. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. And my name is Sasha Reese and
Tony Nila.
Tony Nila, thank you so much. This was a podcast we tried to call, but we're gonna maybe come up with maybe other world, like other name, maybe. I don't know. Help us in that. Dog podcast for people. See you next Wednesday, everyone.
Talk to you next Wednesday. See you guys next Wednesday. Don't forget to enroll.